All right, let's turn to what happened at Cameron Indoor tonight. Duke beating Ohio State. Jeff Goodman, the immediate reaction of what the Blue Devils did this evening.
I'm not surprised. You know, they've done it collectively. Like that's been kind of the beauty of John Scheyer's team so far. Kyle Filipowski's been really good for the most part. And who would have thought he would be the best freshman? You know, but Dariq Whitehead was hurt in the preseason. Derek Lively was hurt a little bit in the preseason. Mark Mitchell was the one who came out of the gate strong, but he's had to adjust to playing high major teams right now. And Filipowski's got the size that Ohio State just wasn't able to match up with tonight. Zay Key's long, but they don't have a lot of other dudes there that can compete with Filipowski at 6'11" and his skill level and his toughness, frankly. Like he has been much tougher than your typical freshman coming out of the NEPSAC, all right? And he didn't go to like our Brewster Academy or some of these other schools up here in New England. But Filipowski's been really good. And the other guys have fallen into line. And Scheyer's played the older dudes, right? Grandison was on the court. Ryan Young was on the court at the end. He knows those guys give him the best chance to win right now.
Filipowski's a monster. I mean, he's the best player on the floor tonight. I didn't think it was close. And the only time I thought that Ohio State would make runs is every time he went to the bench with foul trouble, you know, especially in the second half. The last 3 or 4 minutes of the first half crushed Ohio State. You know, it went from a one-possession game to a 10-point game at halftime, and I didn't think Ohio State ever really got into it. And the times that they did, it was because Filipowski was on the bench. And, man, is he good. He presents a really unique challenge. You know, you just watching the game, he plays the 4 at 7 feet tall. He's setting ball screens, and you can tell Ohio State's defensive game plan, really for the most part throughout the year, is to switch at the 4 like so many teams do because everybody plays 4 out, 1 in. Well, all of a sudden now you had Thornton and some of their smaller guards on Filipowski in the post. That's a problem because he could pass, he can score. You know, they weren't switching to 5. It's hard to start, you know, hedging with a 4-man and trying to get back to your own. You just really start to ask your 5-man to X out and get into rotations, and that becomes a problem. And so I was just really impressed. I think he is one of the best freshmen in the country, if not the best.
Chris, what's the dynamic? What's the dynamic in John Scheyer's first year? Here's a guy that has racked up a combined 9 5-star commitments. Recruiting speaks for itself at Duke. But it's another thing that when you get into games, are you ballsy enough to put your best 5 on the floor to win said games? Like, what's it say to you that Derek Lively and Dariq Whitehead are on the bench late in the game, yet again for Duke? What's that say about Scheyer and what they're trying to do down there?
Well, I mean, John's been around some incredible players now. You know, those aren't the 2 first 5 stars that he's coached. Maybe as a head coach, you know, that's the first time he's been responsible for that. But, you know, he's watched the best of all time, you know, put guys on the bench or, you know, figure out who to go with in certain situations. John's been around, you know, guys that have had long NBA careers. He's played with them. He's coached them. You know, he knows the game. And so, end of the day, those guys are freshmen. You know, they haven't necessarily been in situations before where, you know, you don't want to foul, you want to foul. You know, you need to communicate on a certain type of action. Maybe that freshman hasn't had a whole lot of reps at it. Let's put him on a bench and just make sure that we're really solid here down the stretch. And I don't think that's an indictment of those freshmen. That happens around the country with a lot of freshmen. But it doesn't surprise me that John's, you know, smart enough and savvy enough and poised enough this early in his career to make those type of decisions.
I just think it's interesting because, again, some young guys like that would be worried about if they don't play those guys, how it's going to hurt him down the road with getting those guys again, right? I mean, but I guess it's so early in the season, nobody's going to remember the first 10 games of the year, right? They're going to remember the last 15. If those guys aren't playing then, both of them, then it might be an issue, and they won't. They'll both be on the court when it matters, I would assume, come
Yeah, I would
February.
think so. And the other thing is if they continue to win at a really high level, nobody's going to say anything.
True. Very true.
How good are they right now, Jeff? Where have you ranked them in your most recent poll? Where are you going to put them?
They're like 15-ish, I think. I mean, I think Ohio State's like a top 25-ish team.
Yeah.
And obviously, the home court advantage, and we can go there now. We can wait on it, but the home court advantage is so important at places like Duke and Indiana. Chris knows this, and I really want to hear from Chris on this, but I've been to enough of these places, and some of them are average, and some of them they give you 5 points. They literally give you 5 points in a game, and I think Duke is one of those. Kansas is one of those. Indiana tonight is one of those. Texas Tech was one of those. For the last few years, there are probably, I don't know, how many do you think there are, Chris? There are probably 5 to 10 of them, maybe.
I mean, there's probably more than that. The ones you're talking about, obviously, are the ones that get a lot of coverage and press. But you can go to the University of Dayton, and I'm going to tell you, when they got it going, runs are hard to stop. So I mean, it's just, it's a challenge, And I think when you talk about like where is Duke right now, John, and you say like where do you think they're ranked in the country? The great thing about that is, you talked about those freshmen being thrown on the bench towards the end of the game. They're only going to get better and better as they get more and more experience and more comfortable in big games and big moments. So, I mean, I think that they're on
their trajectory. Yeah, their trajectory is only going to go up and up. Yeah. Right now, watching them in Portland. Yeah, here's the thing. They lack a perimeter dude who you can give the ball to and say, "Hey, go get a bucket."
Yep.
They don't have that yet. And I don't think Jeremy Roach is that every night. He can be that one out of every 3 or 4, but that's not his game either. So to me, it's got to be Derek Whitehead. Filipowski's great, but as you saw, like, you don't want Kyle Filipowski putting the ball on the floor. Yep. We don't really want a lot of that. He tried to go behind his back once the other day. He's loose with the ball. Yep. He's a 7-footer. I mean, come on.
Yep. Well, and the way that Scheyer talked in the preseason, he is anticipating that Whitehead will be that guy for this team.
He hasn't played much.
Right.
He hasn't played much.
Right.
Does Filipowski remind you guys of anyone?
Well, I mean, I read an article earlier today, and Sean Miller talked about, I think it was Norlander. He talked about Lowry Markkinen, and I thought that was obviously a good comparison. Sean would really know because he was, in depth in terms of getting the scouting report and getting ready to play Duke, and then obviously he coached Lowry. So he's unique, man. He's got some toughness to him.
Yes.
He's skilled. He can make free throws.
Yep.
I thought like even his ability on the defensive end to move his feet, he was matched up with Sewing. Sewing was a non-factor the entire game. I thought going into the game, that matchup was going to be like, okay, did the perimeter style 4-man win? Right. Or did I don't know what, I wouldn't say the inside guy because he's more of a Euro, type big. Did that matchup win? And obviously Filipowski won the matchup and the game. But
he's won every matchup. The dude has won basically every matchup so far.
Everyone. He's won every.
Which again, that was the big thing, right? Like, could they guard anybody? If you're playing Filipowski at the 4 with Lively at the 5, which is really ideally what you're going to want down the stretch.
Right.
And Lively's been better. Like, he was better tonight.
Yeah, and I'll say this, man. Like, again, it's one game, but he was really moving his feet well against Sewing. I mean, I was really impressed. He took the correct angles. He stayed in the play, blocked a couple shots. I thought one of the fouls was pretty weak, to be quite honest. He wouldn't have been on the bench, but a couple of the other ones weren't really necessarily, his guys, sort of collateral damage because a teammate gets beat. But, he'll learn. He'll learn how to stay on the floor. And when he does that, he's going to be even more of an impact player for him.